Oh, no. The restlessness was handed down.
Shining a light on autism and life as an autistic person. Welcome to My Friend Autism, a podcast breaking down barriers, stigma, and misconceptions around autism while increasing understanding and acceptance of the autistic community. And now, here's your neurodivergent host, Orion Kelly.
Welcome, my friend. Hey, it's great to have you along for another episode of my podcast, My Friend Autism. I'm Orion Kelly, that autistic guy. I'm all about providing validation and support for autistic people and their loved ones. So thank you for being here, my friend. We're talking about something that's, kind of fascinating to me, but also can be really, really bad. Fawning with an F. How does fawning lead to toxic relationships and increased risk of abuse for autistic people? That is today's topic. All right, now, in saying this, let's be clear on a couple of things. I like to do research on things, passion, special interests, go down the rabbit hole. I research things, I learn things, I convey them back to you. I'm not like a doctor or a healthcare practitioner. I'm not providing you like a service or anything here, right? This is just me talking to you about some fascinating things that I've found out about fawning. Also, you may not acknowledge it or you may call it something different. That's cool. This is just for the purpose of me having a conversation with you. So I think that's kind of the get-go there, yeah? So what is fawning? Let's just get straight to it. What is fawning? Fawning is using people-pleasing to avoid conflict and to earn... That didn't come out right, did it? Did you hear that, how I started to do that part? Yeah, it didn't make any sense. I'm not editing that out. And to earn the approval of others. Okay? So fawning is using people-pleasing to avoid conflict and earn the approval of others. Now, it's one of the 4 survival responses our brain uses to detect and avoid danger. That's located in that part of the brain we call the amygdala. Now, when we detect danger through our senses, so again, I'm not saying these are the only senses, I'm just giving you a brief example here. Okay, so we see it, right? We hear it, we smell it, taste it, touch it. The amygdala is activated. So the senses have been used to sense danger. That obviously activates the amygdala. And then we enter into a survival mode. Now, I obviously spoke about the 4 survival responses. What I will say, people often go, oh, there's 3, right? Isn't it fight, flight, freeze? So I'm saying we're talking about the 4th, fawning. Now, let's look back at our caveman brains, okay? And there's many conversations to have here. Autistic people are autistic because they have a different brain. It's wired differently. But we all have caveman brains, as in we all have, brains that were used many, many years ago for much different purposes. And I guess the point I'm making is, has the brain evolved past the point of what the caveman needed it for, right? Do we need to get so stressed about something when that particular response is because we are about to be attacked and killed by a saber-toothed tiger? Maybe not a woolly mammoth. I think they were herbivores. Okay? But still, it's like saying that elephants can't hurt you. Well, that's a load of crap. Of course they can. So anyway, you see what I'm saying? So there's a caveman, right? And they're trying to stay alive. They don't want to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, right? They don't want to be attacked by a woolly mammoth. So they need that amygdala putting them into a survival mode, a survival response. Now, in modern day, this can happen, and it's very useful for legitimate dangerous experiences. But I mean, you would agree to some extent that we are being put into survival modes, survival responses when it's not really required. And that has a detrimental impact on us, like the sheer release of all the cortisol and stuff. Right? So, like we get it. From a caveman point of view, we get it. It made sense. I don't want to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. I don't want to get trampled by a woolly mammoth. But for us modern-day humans, not so much, right? I mean, sure, there's danger, but it's a very different world we live in. So as danger is detected, the amygdala sends a signal. Now, this is where I say it gets detrimental for us modern-day humans. It sends a signal to the brain to release adrenaline, cortisol, and other chemicals pulsing through our body. That, in turn, increases our heart rate and our circulation, presumably to outrun the saber-toothed tiger, yeah? Right? So if it's increasing your heart rate and your circulation, I can only presume the core caveman reason for that, if you have an increased heart rate and circulation, you're able to move faster, yeah? You're able to react and act faster. That would make sense to me. And we breathe faster as well as part of all these chemicals, adrenaline, cortisol pulsing through. Why? Well, again, I would have thought we are pushed to breathe faster to get more oxygen. And why is that? Well, didn't I just say we were running away from a saber-toothed tiger? So the heart rate and the circulation increases. We breathe faster, more oxygen. That goes to our brain and our limbs. And at this point, the brain then has to decide, after all that, what are we going to do? We're going to fight the saber-toothed tiger? Right? We're going to run away? We're going to just freeze, play dead? Or are we going to fawn? I find this fascinating. Okay, so think about it. This is how amazing the brain is, regardless of what kind of brain you've got. This is, so your senses detect some sort of danger. The amygdala is activated. It sends a signal to release adrenaline, cortisol, other chemicals that increase your heart rate and circulation, force you to breathe faster to presumably get more oxygen. And at that point, then the brain decides, this is how quick this is. And at that point, the brain decides, what do? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Maybe it's just me. Man, I think this is fascinating. Okay, so in general terms, let's go through these. Just one sentence. I don't want to stick on this because I'm not a doctor or anything. I'm not a professor. This is what I kind of, in my general experience, this is what I would say it as. So what's fight? It's pretty obvious, yeah? So it's facing the perceived danger, right? Facing the threat aggressively, fighting it, facing it head on. Flight, running away, flying away, whatever you want to say, getting the hell out of there. Freeze, you're not moving. Now, some would say you are unable to move. Some would say you are unable to act against the threat. And because of that, you freeze. You literally freeze. The brain does not know what's going to work here. Fighting, flying, I'm just frozen, right? Deer in the headlights type setup, yeah? And the final one, fawning, is immediately acting to try and please to avoid any conflict. Now, if we think about this in a caveman point of view, I mean, what would you think? I find this is a curious case, this one. Okay, so fawning would be to immediately decide to act in a way that pleases the danger or the threat, to avoid that conflict. Now, let's look at this even more specifically through the lens of, say, an autistic person. And again, this is my own general kind of thoughts. Okay, so for an autistic person, fight, right? We say it's, facing perceived threats aggressively. For an autistic person, fight can manifest as a meltdown, as an external physical reaction. Flight, and I see this with autistic kids a lot, could be eloping, bolting, wandering. Now, through the lens of autistic kids, eloping, bolting, wandering, in effect, are very dangerous. Like when you hear wandering, right, or eloping, you think, well, so someone's getting married in Vegas or they're going for a stroll. Not in autistic terms. So if you've got a kid at the beach and they're hanging out with you and you turn your back and then you lost them, then you look and they're literally sprinting into the open ocean, right? You could class that as wandering. You could class that as eloping, right? That isn't just bolting. So, and to put it in perspective, with regards to, say, water safety, autistic kids, autistic people for that matter, have disproportionately higher rates of drowning simply based on the wandering response. Autistic kids, they have that kind of flight response, and they can wander, elope, bolt, and they don't even have any idea of what they've put themselves into. And freeze, I think you can guess, if fight is a meltdown, freeze is a shutdown. That makes a lot of sense. And the final one, my friends, through the lens of an autistic person, fawning, which I've told you, is immediately acting to please the threat, to avoid any conflict. For autistic people, that would be classed as masking or camouflaging our autistic traits. Now, masking, in case you're wondering, is where autistic people suppress our neurodivergent traits to appear normal, to appear neurotypical. And for the most part, we do that to neurotypical people. So, masking and fawning could be viewed as a modern-day survival instinct. Not fitting into society. That is an actual danger. That is an actual threat for us. Okay, so we're born different. We live on the premise our saber-toothed tiger is not fitting in. Our woolly mammoth is being rejected by the world around us because we're different. Okay, so our response is to try and please you to avoid that conflict or danger. So if our main and core danger is not being accepted, not fitting in, being rejected, then clearly our main and core survival response will be to please you, to avoid not being rejected. Because as an autistic person, and everyone's different, but I would say as a general rule, if you're an autistic person and you want to fully unmask and be your true, authentic autistic self, you are going to be rejected. In general terms, you are not going to be accepted widely. You are going to be ostracized and rejected and punished. Why? Because people are uncomfortable with differences. It doesn't matter, like, for example, I'm different, yeah? I'm an autistic person. Does that mean that I am free of feeling uncomfortable around other differences? No. No, right? Everyone's the same. We're all the same. Frankly, I think it's a part of humanity. People go, oh, we've all got so much better at accepting differences. We haven't. And you know why? We've got the same caveman brain. So why, how have we? I don't think we have. I think as a general rule, humans intrinsically feel uncomfortable around differences and therefore find it very hard to accept differences. Like, we can try and navigate our way through it, but even in then, all we're really doing is doing our best to hide the fact that we're uncomfortable. Yeah. So from autistic people's point of view, this is where I find this just bloody fascinating. And you might think, oh, this is the boringest conversation ever, Orion. And you can go. You don't have to watch. There's plenty to watch. I mean, it's a video podcast, so you can watch it on my YouTube podcast channel. You can listen to it as an audio podcast. There's plenty of them. You can go binge those. You don't need this one. I'm just saying I find this absolutely fascinating. So in other words, what I'm saying is fawning is something autistic people, in fact, do more than fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, let's talk about some common signs of fawning. I want to talk about, as an autistic person, right, what are some common signs of fawning? And then I want to talk about examples of how it could appear. Yeah? Okay? And then we get to causes and all that kind of stuff. All right. Constantly attempting to please and appease others, a common sign of fawning. Now, people pleasers, right? People get labeled these all the time. I've even heard some people label it as a gender thing, as in women are more agreeable than men. I've heard that before, right? As just an argument. So are you someone who, in your opinion, is constantly trying to please people or at least appease people? As an autistic person, I don't know how you can answer that question apart from anything but yes. Now, that doesn't mean that neurotypical people don't also, but what I'm saying is if we are trying to make people feel comfortable who are going to feel intrinsically uncomfortable with our differences, we therefore must please them, right? Whatever we need to do to please them, to keep them at ease, is what we must do. That's from when you wake up till you go to bed. And now, you can be an adult, right, and talk about this. You can have a 10-year-old autistic kid. They are doing it. From the minute they get on the bus or go to school or whatever, or hang out with their friends, they are trying to please them. Now, remember, I said constantly attempting to please and appease others. I didn't say succeeding. Very rarely do autistic people succeed in trying to please or appease others because we are different. We have a different brain. So the attempting of it is, yes, listen to what I'm saying now. Let this sink in. I'm saying us constantly attempting to please or appease others is a stress response. And what triggered us to constantly attempt to please and appease others? Adrenaline, cortisol, chemicals, heart rate, circulation, breathing. A stress response experienced by a caveman about to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Except our brain and our body are going through that, in effect, every time we come in contact with another human being. How is that sustainable? That isn't sustainable. Here's another one, another example. Common signs of fawning. This is through the lens of autistic people, clearly. Do you ignore your own beliefs? Do you ignore your own ideas and values and beliefs to follow other people's? Right, so as autistic people, we already, I think, have a different world view or a different view of pretty much everything. Now, why is that, Orion? Because we just want to be difficult. No. How can you have the same view of the world as a neurotypical person if you have an autistic brain? Right? Can I just drop the mic and go now? Like, do I need to stay here? Seriously, if you have an autistic brain, how can you view the world through a neurotypical brain? You cannot. So for neurotypical people to get huffy-puffy about why autistic people see the world, view the world, experience the world differently is ridiculous. How else do you expect us to? It's a different bloody brain, mate. So, yeah, that just agitates me. And this is a massive issue for me. Honestly and truly, I think right now, this is true. And, you know, this is true. I'm sorry to say this, but it's true. I reckon if I stopped ignoring my own beliefs, my own ideas, my own values, I would end my content creation career today. As in, I would be cancelled or ended. Why? Because I am ignoring them in many instances to follow the masses, the neurotypical masses, because I know, and this is how the world is these days, if you have an opinion or a view or a belief or a value that's different to others, then you are wrong. So, and it doesn't matter if it's yours. Hey, this is just my opinion. Well, I don't care if it's just your opinion. It offended me. That opinion offended me. I don't agree with that opinion, and therefore you're gone. You're over. Get off. You're banned. You can't create or post content anymore. And because I've got an autistic brain. Do you really think that I'm going to have the same view or opinion of big and small issues in the world or in humanity than you are? Even if you're autistic as well. That's ridiculous. So a lot of these things confuse me. I'm confused by a lot of things as an autistic person. And I'm sorry to say that if that comes across weird or offensive, but and I apologize every day for the same crap. I am confused. My autistic brain is very confused with where the world is at the moment. I don't understand. My autistic brain can't get around how we've got to a point in the world right now where you can have entirely different versions of fact and truth and reality. I can't get my head around that. My brain can't get my head around that. And that can go through all facets, yeah? I just don't understand. In my brain, sure, it's concrete and rigid and black and white, but it's also strongly logical. Now, here's the thing that helps the argument. The autistic brain has a stronger logical portion than the emotional part of the brain. Neurotypical people have a stronger, more developed emotional part of the brain than logical part of the brain. Now, of course, this is in general terms. Okay, so if I'm seeing things more logically than emotionally, wouldn't that mean that my beliefs would stack up more than someone who's seeing them through a more emotional brain? Well, simple logic, and that's all I can go from, says yes. Of course, Orion. Right? If your beliefs or thoughts or ideas are based on pure logic or more logic than emotions, that would make them more credible, right? And that's the same. People go, don't let your emotions get into this argument. You see what I'm saying? That's the point. So anyway, I know I'm staying on this too long, but it actually, to be honest with you, it's worrying me. My beliefs, ideas, and values as an autistic person seem so far away, so adrift from many community or neurotypical views that I am just ignoring them all and suppressing them all and just smiling and nodding. Again, it's a sign of fawning. I'm doing that to please you, to appease you. Maybe not you, but the world around me. Because the people that actually listen and watch my stuff, they get it and they agree for the most part. But this is the issue. I could have all these people, or more specifically you, watching this or listening to this. I could have that. Some idiot who's never watched a single minute of my stuff sniffs one thing and they bring the whole thing down. It doesn't make any sense, but that's the world we live in. All right, another common sign of fawning through autistic lens. Do you rely on the reactions, the thoughts, the emotions of others to determine your own thoughts and emotions? Now, this is a big one for autistic people. Okay, so you obviously have your own thoughts and emotions, but do you rely on, factor in the thoughts, emotions, and reactions of those around you before you determine what yours are going to be? I mean, this is another big one. Can you relate to that? Can I get a thumbs up? Can I get a like? Can I get a comment? Can I get a something? You see what I'm saying? All right, here's another one. An inability to set boundaries and say no. Another common sign of fawning. Boundaries and saying no for autistic people. People go, but autistic people are so honest and they're so blunt and, raw, and that's not the same. Like, autistic people, as a rule, aren't great with conflict. And really, fawning is the classic pleasing behavior. So boundaries or saying no can be very hard. We'll almost put ourselves through stress and pressure and trauma almost just to avoid the conflict, to please or appease others. Another sign, do you feel like you have a lack of personal identity? Do you even imitate others? Right? Do you appear to the outside world potentially to have no personality or interests? So this is a sign of fawning. Lacking your own personal identity, trying to mimic or imitate others, is a sign of pleasing, appeasing. I mentioned this before, but I think this is also an addition. I talked about your values and things. This is an addition. I just want to bring this up while I thought about it, okay? The idea that, so we talked about it before, and I'm not going to go into it a long time, but I just want to say it from a different angle. Have you got to the point now where you've actually lost sight of your own beliefs, ideas, morals, and ethics? Like, forget about the idea that you're ignoring them. Have you actually forgotten what they are? Have you lost sight of them? Have you got to the point where you've ignored them for so long, you've actually lost sight of you and your beliefs, your ideas, your morals, your ethics. That's a dangerous place to be, my friend. Dangerous place to be, which clearly means a sign of, of stress. Survival response. Another one, ignore your own needs in order to address the needs of others. The needs of autistic people are needs based on a medically diagnosed neurodevelopmental disability condition. Okay? These are needs entrenched in a diagnosis. And we still ignore them for the needs of others who do not have any form of disability condition diagnosis. This is the thing that I find so sick, by the way. Friends, family, not strangers, friends, family, people close to us are happy for us to ignore our own needs for theirs. Autistic people, unfortunately, to some people, have needs that are tiresome to them. Like that need for genuine alone time based on a dysregulation, a state where it's not sustainable for anyone to be around, or the importance of actually being able to cultivate their special interests or their passions, or their needs for navigating sensory issues or communication and social challenges, right? These are like real needs, but people find them so tiresome. So you do tend to ignore them just to put the needs of others first. And the last one I'll say, as a common sign of fawning, respond to criticism with an apology or with praise or admiration. Okay, so, for the most part, a neurotypical person is criticizing you, is talking down to you. First thing you do is apologize or say, sorry, I'm so sorry about that. That was my bad. I say that all the time. It's like a script. They're giving you crap for something and you're apologizing to them. But then you're even praising them, right? Admiring. It's just putting them on a pedestal. It's just bizarre. But it's another great example of fawning. Is that something you would do? We know when people criticize you, if they're trying to give you crap about something, the first thing you do is apologize for it. It's like, for starters, let's hear it and see if it's legitimate. Because most of the time we're apologizing for things we don't need to apologize for, but it's already out. It's like, well, that's what we do. Oh, thank you so much. Thanks so much for telling me that how crap I was at that or whatever. Or, blah, blah, blah. That's, oh man, I really appreciate your support in this. Thanks so much for being there for me. Like, what a load of shit. All right. As fawning is in essence a positive experience externally, is one of the most difficult negative behaviors to identify. Orion, what in the hell did you just say? Fawning, when you're fawning, okay, it's difficult for you. It's a difficult negative thing to do. It's a stress response. It's a survival response. Yet, when you do these fawning things, it's positive to the people around you. Do you see what I'm saying now? Everything I just said as an example, right, is good for people. Okay, so here's the thing, right? So fawning is bad for the person doing it. It's internally bloody horrible. But if you're constantly trying to please and appease others around you, that's positive, yeah? That behavior they're seeing is positive. How good's that? How good's this guy? Right? You're valuing or following their beliefs. How good's that? You're relying on their reactions and emotions to think about yours. Right? You're setting no boundaries and saying yes to them. You're going with their interests and hobbies, their beliefs, ideas, morals. You're ignoring your needs. You're going with their needs. Oh, that sounds great. Let's do that. Let's go to that busy cafe. They give you some criticism and you thank them, right? So see what I'm saying? Fawning to people around you isn't a stress response. It isn't a survival response. They're viewing it as bloody positive because it's all good to them. For you, though, it's bloody horrible. You see what I'm saying? Just see how bent out of shape this is? For the person fawning, I'm banging my fingers down like some sort of weird old politician. For the person fawning, it is a horrific, horrible, damaging survival response, stress response. It does nothing to help you as a human being, to help your health physically and mentally, emotionally. But for those around you, it's bloody great behavior. It's positive behavior. It's, wow, how good are we together? How good's this going? Do you see what I mean? It's like, wow, that's a great response. I really appreciate you doing that. Do you see how bent out of shape that is? Well, who cares, Orion? What's the difference? The difference is you could actually be a human being experiencing stress and survival responses with adrenaline, cortisol, chemicals pulsing through your body, feeling like you're having a stress test because your heart's pumping, your circulation, your breathing. You feel like you're going to die on the spot, right? That's how you're feeling. That's clearly someone who is in distress and may need assistance or help. And the people experiencing what you're going through are thinking you're having a great day. And how good's this guy? You see how bad that is? So let's try and work this out. Yeah. Okay. So fawning can be in essence a positive experience to people around you, externally. Okay. You know what? Not even just to people around you. Fawning in essence can be a positive experience that you are putting out externally, right? By just going with their needs, you know, going by the, like we talked about, even your external manifestation can come across pleasing to the eye. But internally, it's only triggered because you're in stress. So how would this appear? Let's go some examples. Okay. So fighting hard for something. I did this a lot. You're an autistic person. You fight hard for something that you either really believe in or really want. And then you act like, don't mind if it never happens. You never really wanted it anyway. If you say no, no worries. So, you see what I'm saying? You're fighting hard for something because you really want it or need it, or, you know. But then if you get a no, or it doesn't happen, or they won't allow it, it's like, no worries. Externally, they're like, oh, cool. That was easy. Doesn't bother me at all. No worries at all. Hey, all good. Another example of how it can look positive externally, but be bloody horrible internally. Thanks so much for that criticism. I really appreciate it. Right, inside, different. But I'm so sorry. You're right. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. How about saying I love you after you express negative emotions like anger? How about behaving perfectly, whether it's at school or at work, but not at home? Apologizing excessively. I do this. It doesn't have to be criticism, anything. I feel like, honestly, my first sentence out of my mouth in any communication most of the time is, I apologize, or I'm sorry about that. Anything. Honestly, I don't even know why, and I know why from this, you know, talking about this topic, but it is honestly, I'm not even kidding. It's like, did you do this? Were you able to do that? Oh, so sorry, you didn't do it, or forgot. Yeah, that's just bizarre. Acting in a way that appears more. Now, I always stuff this up. Sycophantic. Yeah, acting in a way that appears more. Sycophantic, I hate that word. Praising people in authority in a way that is not sincere, usually in order to get some sort of advantage from them. So, acting in that way rather than a helpful way. Another one is not behaving in the expected way. So, people would expect you in this instance to behave disappointed or frustrated or sad in situations where you have missed out on something. So not behaving disappointed, frustrated, sad if you missed out on something when it's expected you would. See, there's a fawning response. You've chosen to appease or please in that instance. They take that as a positive response, even though it's unexpected. Well, that's unexpected, but well done. Inside, not so much. All right. Causes and impact. Man, I just find this psychology stuff fascinating. I'm sorry if you don't. I'm apologizing to you. See, this is a problem. That wasn't even on the... I'm apologizing without even realizing I'm apologizing. Here we go. Fawning is considered a trauma response used to establish a sense of safety. Now, this trauma response is often developed as a reaction to repeated traumatic events, opposed to single event trauma. So it could be childhood or ongoing abuse. What are the causes for autistic people? Receiving countless more criticisms and negative reactions daily compared to, in general terms, our neurotypical peers. We know this to be the case. That's a pretty big cause here. So fawning is considered a trauma response used to establish a sense of safety. It's often developed as a reaction to repeated traumatic events. Autistic people receive countless more criticisms and negative reactions daily, repeatedly. We are often punished or ostracized for our autistic behaviors. Meltdowns, shutdowns, outbursts. What are we labeled as? Brats, having a tantrum, monsters, right? We're actively told to suppress our natural autistic behaviors and responses that make neurotypical people uncomfortable. What's an example? Stimming. Can you stop moving like that? Can you stop that repetitive behavior or movement? Can you stop playing with that stupid toy? Can you stop rocking back and forth? Can you stop moving like that? Can you just be normal? I hear that a lot. Can you just sit like a normal person? What does that mean? We are often, in fact, constantly, I would say, compared to and measured against neurotypical people and standards. Now, come on, guys. I say this so often because I'm just so sick of it. Whether it's partners or parents, you have to stop placing neurotypical expectations on autistic people. I know most of the time you're just doing it for you because you still haven't accepted that your partner or child is autistic and therefore cannot reach neurotypical expectations, and therefore that means you as a person are now going to have to grieve the fact that you won't have a neurotypical partner or child. So this is about you more than us. Once you grieve and accept the fact you won't have a neurotypical partner or you won't have a neurotypical child, you will no longer place neurotypical expectations and standards upon them. Yet this still happens every day. It's massive, guys. It's got to bloody stop. Okay, another cause. Labeled as rude, loud, stupid, annoying, aggressive, violent, raw. What's another one? Blunt, robotic, emotionless, sexless, whatever. Constantly, these things are happening. These are causes of fawning. So if you're constantly called these things, right, why would you do anything but jump into the fawning response? In other words, try to not be that. Even though you're not being rude as an autistic person, you're communicating differently because you're autistic, you will try to appease people or please people rather than being labeled those things, which aren't even true. There's not a neurotypical person on the planet that couldn't be labeled all those things and more based on a lifetime of not even once trying to understand the differences in how autistic people communicate because of a different brain. You want to call us stupid? Please. A couple more causes, then we'll get to the impact. So our authentic autistic traits and behaviors are not accepted. Forget about being praised, encouraged, celebrated, appreciated. Our authentic autistic selves are not accepted, right? Forget about welcomed. If we're not accepted as ourselves, what other response could there be but fawning? And the final cause I'll talk about, and this is a really sad one. This one just hits. Have a listen to this one. Okay. So, causes of fawning, repeated trauma, right, that results in a trauma response. This cause is, in fact, when we fawn, you welcome it and reward it. Hello, can you hear me now? See what I'm saying? We fawn. Our trauma response based on repeated trauma is welcomed. You reward it. Nice dog. Did a good job. Pat, pat, pat. Right? Yes, that's going to cause us to fawn more. That's what we want people to welcome us and say, wow, great job. But in fact, it's not for the right reasons. It's not for us being us. It's for us fawning. Can you understand how horrible that is? One of the main causes of autistic people fawning is that you welcome it and reward when they do it. All right. Look, this is a really basic conversation with impact. I think I've kind of talked about it. So, whether you want to call it fawning, masking, let's be clear, and we know this already. Masking, camouflaging, suppressing, it's exhausting. It's debilitating. It's not sustainable. It further alienates us from the world that seemingly isn't willing to accept us in the first place. Over time, fawning leads to dangerous, toxic relationships. It increases the risk of abuse and mistreatment. Fawning actively diminishes our self-worth. It causes mental health conditions. It increases the likelihood of being abused by your partner. Autistic people's fawn responses are often, this is a big one, are often misread as safe states. Listen to this one. Let this sink in. And our safe states are often misread as trauma responses. Whoa, Nelly. Whoa, Nelly. Let's read that again. Autistic people's fawn responses are often misread. In other words, viewed as us being in a safe state. When we fawn, the people around us think we are exhibiting someone who is safe. In other words, someone who has not had a survival response triggered. And you see how damaging this can be. Now, what does that mean? Okay, so if we are in a stress response, a survival response, and because our go-to is fawning, and it comes across in a positive way, like a pleasing way, people therefore say, well, you're obviously in a safe state. You're not under any duress, which is the reverse. But then that means that when we are actually not feeling stressed or not needing to be a survival response, we're actually are in a safe place, that is misunderstood or misread or viewed by others as a trauma response. So when we're having a trauma response because we're fawning, people think we're safe. We feel safe, right? And when we feel safe, people think we're having some sort of trauma response. Hey, I'm no goddamn psychologist here or PhD dude here. I'm just a dude. And my brain already says that is real. If that's the formula for life for autistic people, we're all stuffed. Right? This is obviously going to lead to ineffective and clearly damaging care. I hope that sunk in, that part. I just find that part really, it's horrible. It stresses me out, man. Because our trauma response is pleasing. So it looks like we're safe, we're happy. Right? We're not being chased by the saber-toothed tiger. Right? And then when we are actually feeling safe and no one's chasing us, you think we're having a trauma response. They're reversed. Anyway, I feel like I'm going over this 100 times, but I just wanted to sink in. I just want to do some strategies and then I'm going to go, mostly to please you. Okay, here we go. Key strategies to help the autistic person in your life navigate fawning. And why is this more about others and not them? It's because this is actually a response, to perceived danger or threats. That doesn't usually come from yourself. So here we go. You could stop criticizing them for their non-harmful neurodivergent behaviors, like stimming, echolalia, palilalia, whatever it is. Does that make sense? And I was clear. I said non-harmful. Just like neurotypical people, autistic people can have behaviors that can be a danger to themselves or a danger to others. So even that you shouldn't criticize, right? So you obviously need to protect them and the people around you, and they need to know that's not acceptable. But that's not the same as criticizing it. I can't believe you're autistic again and almost hurt yourself or hurt your brother. Like, what's that going to achieve? So that's a big one. The criticism, guys. This is not going to help. Also, you need to help them identify their feelings when they're faced with conflict. So this is an issue. This is an alexithymia thing, but the idea of emotions and identifying them and conveying them. If they're told they can't do something important to them, but then, like I said, their response, their trauma response, their fawning response is, it's fine. They come across happy. You should know at that point, I think they might be fawning. And you should use that as a way to help them identify and experience their actual feelings. Letting them know that that's actually natural and acceptable. Make sense? Okay. Encourage them to think about their own needs and not just the needs of others. Again, we talked about this. This is a big thing. Got some basic examples that I've experienced as a dad or just as a dude. Not giving away all your favorite things before choosing them for yourselves. Lollies, chocolates, treats. You've got some. You let other people take your favorite ones before you choose, knowing that you might miss out. Or not always letting a sibling choose what TV show to watch. This is a thing. So autistic people may be very controlling of the TV, or they may be constantly trying to appease the other people. So we don't want them to constantly be putting themselves last. This is not about teaching them to put themselves first in all situations, but it's a good start. Making them feel empowered to actually speak up, to ask for what they need. What kind of food they need, drink, break, alone time, this, that, right? Just empowering that rather than suppressing it. It's really, that's classic fawn response, yeah? Here's another one. Actively praising them for expressing a preference or self-advocating, right? So advocating for yourself is hard. And as an autistic person, it's really hard. You've got to praise that and cultivate that. You've got to model this self-validation and self-care. And then you prompt them to join in. So self-care, self-validation, it's good for you to do too. Now, whether you're a neurotypical partner, parent, or another autistic person, you model what you want to be seen and to be adopted. That just makes sense to me. I feel like I have no voice left. I must have got very stressed in this. Encourage them to set boundaries. So, okay, let's go through some examples. Let's say you hear, a sibling or a partner or a friend trying to convince the autistic person to do a certain thing that they don't want to do or they don't like. Now, for a kid, it could be, hey, you see a sibling trying to make them do a game that they want to play that the autistic person hates or doesn't want to play, right? Or feels uncomfortable doing, going here, doing this, people, whatever, groups, whatever it is, in a work setting. It could be special meetings or, these bloody stupid team bonding things at a bowling club or whatever. God help me. So you see what I'm saying? Okay. This situation is as clear as day. You can see someone's trying to convince them to do something they clearly do not want to do, aren't comfortable doing, or don't like to do. This can be as simple as prompting them. Are you sure you want to do this? You know it's okay not to. But they're just basic little things. They're like, whoa, really? You're giving me permission to do what's right for me? You can also help them cultivate relationships with siblings, workmates. It's like compromise. Okay, well, it's really nice of you to want to do that. You're very kind. You're very kind for pushing through this for them, because I know you don't want to do it. I know you don't like this kind of thing. Maybe you give yourself a time limit, and then maybe you can do something you want to do. Like you're actually highlighting that situation. Because then you've also got to help the other person, right? So the sibling or the workmate understand that they're actually doing this, for you. It's important that, you can return that favor too, yeah? How about you just actively discourage fawning? How good would that be? If you see it, so I think you'll know now, because to you it'll seem positive in a way where it probably shouldn't be. Yeah, the feeling is, point it out. Ask them, is this really how you feel, or are you just trying to please me or appease me? Is this really what you want or think or feel right now, or are you just doing this for me to make me feel better or pleased? Because you don't need to do that if that's the case. I mean, I'll thank you for trying to be nice, but what do you really want to do? Like, you want them to be themselves, and to do that, you have to love them for who they are and, help them, empower them into that. Because ultimately, the clear trigger for fawning is, in my opinion, the clear remedy, right? It's a trauma response. So you don't want to trigger it. You want to help them with it. Stop triggering it. Now, this is just one of those conversations. I just find this bloody fascinating. So I hope you've got something out of it.
My Friend Autism with Orion Kelly. Catch up on all the episodes at orionkelly.com.au.
Love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channels. By all means, if there's something you want to mention, say, like, comment, share, email, please do it. Be looking forward to hearing from you and get your thoughts in the comments below. Until the next time, thank you so much for your support, my friends. We'll talk soon.
You've been listening to My Friend Autism with Orion Kelly. To join the conversation, get in touch with Orion and binge all the podcasts, blogs and videos, visit orionkelly.com.au.